Welcome to Tales from the Trenches Tuesdays. Today, it's my absolute privilege to have Susan Fochs on with us. Susan is a self-proclaimed nonprofit aficionado and coffee connoisseur. Susan originally hails from Door County, Wisconsin, with a bachelor's in human services leadership and business admin, as well as a master's in public policy. At 18, Susan founded the nonprofit organization Operation Not Alone, which is dedicated to serving military members and veterans under an umbrella of mental health initiatives. She still runs the organization almost 10 years later with a dedicated team of 6 people, with a 6-figure valuation, and received national recognition for the global impact. Around the same time of launching her own nonprofit, she was highly involved with the Miss America organization, holding 3 local titles through the Miss Wisconsin Scholarship Organization. She earned recognition from the Miss America organization with her charity work and winning the Jean Bartel Scholarship for military awareness on their national stage. Susan currently works as the director of sales for Headbands of Hope, a one-for-one company that donates headbands to children battling illnesses. To date, they've donated over 1.5 million headbands to every children's hospital in the U.S. and 19 other countries. In her free time, you'll find Susan hiking, kayaking, sipping coffee, or hanging with some adorable rescue pets. Welcome, Susan. It's hard to believe you have any free time based on that bio. So if you were to kind of look back and say, okay, this is what I did almost 10 years ago, what would you do differently today, knowing what you know today?
Oh my gosh, I would do so many things differently. I mean, at minimum, like social media, branding, marketing, like it's just such a different, complete world. But I think it does mean so much. And I think, the pandemic did a lot of that where you're not doing events, you're not seeing people face to face. Like they're looking you up on an Instagram or a TikTok page and they're basing their perceived value of you off of that. And also it's not even just your value. It's your trustworthiness. It's like, do I trust to hand this person some money, whether it's $5 to $5,000? Like, do I trust what this person is doing? Do I trust that they're going to use the money the way that they say they are? And are they going to actually do something for good for it? So it's not even just having value. I think so much of it is trustworthiness. I mean, I get so many emails and like Instagram DMs, and I'm sure you do too, with all those questions. Questions I hate that are like, what percent goes to overhead? Like, do you actually use the money for what you say that you're going to do? How much of this actually goes back into a care package or into this? And I hate those questions because it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, well, our overhead is very low because we don't pay no one is an employee. We don't pay people.
Right.
But I'm also just like, I could quote you any number to say that this is what it takes to keep our website domain open and, have some insurance and do all these things. But it's always that hard part where like that number never pleases people, no matter what it is.
Yeah. I've actually found that those who ask, unless the number is 0, it's too much.
Right. Well,
right. So whatever you spend, it's too
right.
much.
Well, and it's so funny because I love to ask, like, what do you think overhead is? Like, are you asking me, do I buy first class flights for myself and call it business? Or again, like a website domain costs money. Sometimes there are banking fees that cost money. Like, like what do you consider overhead? Are you asking me about salaries? And are you asking me if I'm secretly a millionaire off of your donations, which I am not? Or are you asking me like what fees do we pay to just simply exist? And I think if you explain that to people, like even that answer annoys them. I'm like, we still have to.
Yeah. And and when it comes to the salaries, that's always been kind of a big issue with folks. And especially now where everyone's talking about this quiet quitting, which I despise that phrase. If you were hired to do a job, do the job, right? But you can't expect folks to give 120% and not compensate them. Like it just, there's a disconnect there. But, salaries are usually the biggest component of any nonprofit's expenses. The salaries are a huge part, and there's nowhere else where it's scrutinized to that level.
No, not at all.
And very few people who are in the nonprofit world are in it to become
No.
wealthy. There's the few that are in charge of huge multi-billion-dollar charities, but those are rarities. They're diamonds in the rough. It's not the average
Right.
fundraiser. The average fundraiser is kind of eking out a living if they
Right.
can.
But again, even
It's
things with like, inflation. I'm not sure necessarily where our Canada US divide is for this, but like inflation rates have been absurd. Like the simple cost of living has gone up so much. So it's like the idea that you're still going to pay
right.
this really hardworking fundraiser $40,000 and they're not able to make their rent payments and they're going bartending at night to try and make ends meet. That's not fair to them either. So it's never, I don't think for nonprofits, it's ever about becoming a millionaire, but it is still about giving them like really good, decent, like livable wages that they're not stressed out all the time trying to pay off their student loans and, just not worry about it.
Yeah. How did you go about recruiting other folks to join you
Yeah,
on your
it
mission?
really, and this is why I quote so much of the Miss America organization because it goes so much back to that, and then also the sorority I was in college when I started it. Because talk about two very large groups of people who are ready to like do other activities and do things, and have already signed up to have other Saturdays elsewhere. And so with the sorority, it was nice because there's also, there was mandatory volunteer hours that had to be built in there. So it was nice to be able to motivate like 50 women to always just be like, well, every single one of you needs at least 10 hours like this semester. So it's 500 hours that you could do like for me and it can all count and it's great. And then Miss America was good because that was like the first opportunity that I had a microphone in front of a very large auditorium of people that I could tell about this and then talk about the organization. And from there, that's how I got like my original. And I still have great volunteers from both of those sides today, who are some of my top volunteers still now. But it was a very unique situation that I had groups of people and again, access to a microphone. um,
Well, it seems like, there's a lot going on your plate. So everyone kind of unwinds in their own different way. So how does Susan unwind?
That is a great question. In the last couple of years, I'm sure this might become a very cliche answer. I have developed, or not developed, I've uncovered my love for therapy and somewhere I can go to talk about all of it and unwind. And that has made me become a really big like meditator. I also just love taking really long walks.
Right.
Granted, I live in Wisconsin; it gets very cold very fast, but I was
As
just
you're
saying you're
talking
in
to the
Canada, you
Canadian.
know that. And so, but honestly, like a good, like
Yeah.
a very long walk outside. But I'm a very big meditator, and yeah, I just kind of like to relax and unwind that way. It's probably very cliche and not that exciting, but honestly, fresh air and just being able to like shut off every device in the house for a little bit is probably the best, most simple medicine you can do.
Susan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. It's probably been a little over a year since we last chatted, but it
Honestly,
almost seems like yesterday. You are such an
well,
easy person
thank
to
you for
talk to.
that.
If folks wanted to get hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
Oh yeah, honestly, I mean, social media is a great way. Like, find me on well, quite frankly, I would say Instagram. My personal is either my cat is in the middle of all these. My personal Instagram is just at Susan Fochs, so Fochs, or you can find me for Operation on a Loan, so just at Operation on a Loan. Otherwise, I'm always free to give out my email, which is just Susan at operationonalone.net.
Amazing. Susan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Jack. This was an honor.
Hi, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here.